Now we have set up a cluster, but with LDAP we are running yet another server, which is the LDAP server, then also Apache Directory Studio. So feel free to just use one single server for this configuration, or as a bonus, just configure your whole cluster. It all works the same way, and typically when you have a cluster, you want that. What we're doing here is we're just saving resources as all of our machines run on the same notebook. Well, you judge whatever environment you have and whatever passion you have for setting up Liferay for the full cluster in production. Of course, you should do this. Now, if you look at the exercise, it first says make sure that LDAP is running, but so far we have not yet opened this directory. This is the Apache DS directory, which also has the LDAP server and Apache Directory Studio, which we're going to use. And in order to see what we need here, let's first look at Liferay Tomcat 1. So we want to configure Liferay Tomcat 1 with LDAP, and a little bit further up we have configured Apache DS for us. We didn't look at it yet, but hey, we can easily build it now. So we can be in here. Build Apache DS, and now as I have changed the dependency of Liferay Tomcat 1, I'm also going to build just and as I said, just make sure if you want to configure Liferay Tomcat 2 as well. And that concludes what we need in terms of configuring our containers. Now we have the new Apache DS, which we can start. Let me do this. And as you can see, I'm starting with a blank system, so I don't have anything else running than Apache DS, which means I can actually now start Liferay Tomcat 1. In the background, I don't need it right now, but this brings us back to where the exercise wants us to be, where we can check Docker PS. Now we'll have Apache DS running, we'll have Liferay Tomcat 1 running, MySQL, Elasticsearch, and that's it. We don't have Liferay Tomcat 2 running, but that's fine. Now the next exercise, or the next part we'll need an insight into the LDAP directory, and for that we have prepared Apache Directory Studio for whatever architecture you have. So choose Windows 64-bit. I would say typically everybody now should have 64-bit. Just pay attention, there's always a mixture of Win32 and then 64 in the end. Choose the one that runs for your system. This is not matching your operating system, actually. This is matching your Java virtual machine. But typically, I would say nowadays, these are all the 64-bit machines. I have already unzipped mine, and I can just start Apache Directory Studio here. And once it's started up, I can connect to our local LDAP browser. Okay, so we have this warning, I am on Linux. I might need 127.0.0.1. Now there's the trick question, what's the difference between localhost and 127.0.0.1? The solution is this is IPv4 while localhost is IPv6. So if you have these problems, then just try the explicit IPv4 address. Now I need to look up my next user, bind dn, and I'm just typing that from the exercise. And the password is secret, literally. Now we can browse the LDAP directory, and the exercise asks us to extend DC training. And then we can look at the people. We have several people in here that we will use for logging in to Liferay a little bit later. Now with this LDAP directory, with this people directory and groups directory, we will start our Liferay and configure it to access our LDAP settings. Okay, let's go to the configuration for our LDAP settings, which are in Control Panel, Configuration, Instance Settings. And in the instance settings, you will find an authentication section. You might need to open it. I did it in a previous trial, so it might look like this. So you'll open the authentication section. There you'll find LDAP. Scrolling down a little bit more, we can add an LDAP server here. Now we'll have the proper LDAP server names, and we can totally fill them out. Okay, now I'm going to fill them out according to the exercise. And the password, remember, is secret. Now we'll say test the LDAP connection. Let's see if I have everything right. Liferay says, yes, I could connect. That's fine. Now, next test. We will need to let Liferay know how LDAP thinks of our users, because every LDAP server has a different way of naming the users, of mapping the users, the different user items that we have. I'll just make sure that this is all correct. Let me start up here. So mail is email address, object class e.org person, and so on. Actually, I have made sure that this is all correct. And the correct settings are given in your exercise, in the written exercise. And I can just check test LDAP users, and I will see the same users that I have seen on the Directory Studio as well. So let's compare them. Just click on Directory Studio, and here we have the people, and these are the same people as I can see here in my Liferay LDAP test. Okay, this is not yet configured. This is all just testing. So the next test we will need to do is we will need to test the group memberships. And again, a lot of defaults are quite good here with the groups that we have down here. We will just make sure that these settings are correct, and indeed they are. So let's look at the groups, and these are indeed exactly the groups that are expected according to the exercise. So this is just what we have found in the LDAP directory, and that's fine. Now that we have tested the server connection, the users, and the groups, we can save this server. This means we now have a new LDAP server added to our system. And let's go back to the authentication section down here. We'll need to select the LDAP tab again. And with this one server being added, this is the server now, we can enable our LDAP server or our LDAP authentication. If we would say we'll require LDAP authentication, then our test user, our administrator, couldn't log in anymore because he or this user is not included in the LDAP directory. So we will just say this is enabled, and I'll save this. Now LDAP is enabled, and I can open either a private browsing window, but in order to make it a lot clearer, I will just open Chromium. So far I've been working in Firefox, and let's go with localhost 8081 to access our Tomcat 1, the same machine as I have in the background. And we can sign in to this system with one of the users from our LDAP system. And the name is don't ask how that person came into the directory. The password is password. Now, while this user signs in, all of the data for this user is being imported from LDAP, which means all of the user information, the full name, and so on is all included and brought over from the LDAP directory. And as this user signs in for the first time, I'll have to agree. I'm not quite sure why I have to change the password. And there we are, logged in with a user account from LDAP. And let's check who is in here right now. This is again my administrative account. Let's check our user accounts that we have now. There is this user coming from LDAP, and it's actually a user who is member in a user group that we also saw on the LDAP side. So now, just in case you've been wondering what happened here with the password, let me sign this user out. And as I have set a different password, I believe this is only coming from the password policy that we have. And I should be able to sign in with the LDAP password, which is true. So this is, again, the LDAP password. And we'll have to work a little bit on the local password policy here in order to make sure that this user is not forced to create a new password upon new signing in. So just in case you were wondering what that is, I'll encourage you to look at the password policies and work with them so that you can make sure that no LDAP user is forced to change their password upon first login. And that concludes the exercise for creating an LDAP connection.